The room fell silent as William Carter walked in. His blue diplomat uniform stood out among the colorful robes and exoskeletons of the alien representatives. This was the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, where 200 species made decisions that affected trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. Carter took a deep breath. As Earth's first ambassador to this body, he carried the hopes of 10 billion humans on his shoulders. "The human wishes to address the council again," announced the Zorian chairperson, Dominant Vex. His scales shimmered with impatience under the bright lights. "Let us hear what the primitive has to say today." Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. Carter had faced this mockery for 3 weeks now. He stepped forward anyway, his face calm despite the anger in his heart. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice steady. "For 21 days I have presented Earth's case for membership. I have shown you our art, our science, our philosophy. I have answered every question, followed every rule, and met every demand." He paused, looking at the massive crystal table where the senior council members sat. The Zorians watched him with their yellow eyes. The Melfian delegation waved their tentacles in boredom. Only Alara, representative of the Small Meridian Alliance, seemed to pay real attention. Yet each day we face new barriers, new tests, new reasons why humans are not ready for full membership, Carter continued. Yesterday, the Council demanded we share our fusion technology but denied us access to standard galactic medical databases. Carter reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small device. He placed it on the podium in front of him. It projected the Earth flag, blue with the outline of continents and stars radiating outward. "I have new instructions from my government," he said. "Humanity withdraws its petition for membership in the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The Pushti chamber erupted. Some aliens stood up, others clicked or whistled in surprise. The Zorian chairperson slammed his ceremonial staff 3 times. "Order! We will have order!" Dominant Vex shouted. When the noise died down, he turned to Carter with a look of amusement. "The human species rejects the honor of even being considered for membership? This is unprecedented arrogance." Carter shook his head. "Not arrogance, self-respect." He looked around the room slowly. "For 8 months of your standard year, we have endured tests and evaluations. We have opened our world to your inspectors. We have shared our culture and knowledge freely. And in return, we have been mocked, dismissed, and treated as children." The Melfian elder waved a dismissive tentacle. "You are children. Your species has barely left its home system. You have not even terraformed your neighboring planet successfully." "Because we chose a different path," Carter replied. "We chose to perfect life support technology instead of reshaping entire worlds. We chose to live within our means rather than strip mining our system. Different does not mean inferior." The tall, blue-skinned Alara stood up from her seat among the junior council members. "The human speaks truth. Their approach to space is unlike ours, but their technological growth rate is remarkable. Perhaps we should—" "Silence," Dominant Vex interrupted. "The Meridian Alliance is barely a century into council membership. You have no standing to speak on admissions matters." Alara sat down, but her eyes remained on Carter with newfound respect. Carter continued, his voice growing stronger. "Humanity will forge its own path among the stars. We will develop our technology, expand at our own pace, and build relationships with those who treat us as equals." The Zorian chairperson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "Without council protection, you will be easy prey. There are many species who would happily claim your resources and enslave your people. Your system sits on the edge of 3 territorial disputes. We are aware of the risks," Carter replied, "and we are prepared to defend ourselves." Laughter filled the chamber again, louder this time. "With what?" asked a Drovian general, his metal face plates shifting in amusement. "Your primitive fusion drives and chemical weapons? Your species would not survive a week against even a minor power." Carter smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Perhaps, but we would rather face those odds than surrender our dignity and future to a council that sees us as nothing more than amusing pets or useful servants." He picked up the Earth projection device and turned to leave. The laughter followed him, but he did not look back. Alara caught up with him in the grand hallway outside. Her blue skin seemed to glow under the artificial light. "Ambassador Carter." "Wait," she called. When he stopped, she lowered her voice. "What you did was brave, but also dangerous. The Council does not forget slights." Carter nodded. "I know, but my orders were clear. Earth will not beg for scraps from those who think themselves our masters. The Zorians have ruled the Council for 2,000 years, Ilara said. They treat all younger species this way at first. In time, they might allow us limited trade rights, special observer status, permission to mine our own asteroid, belt without oversight." Carter shook his head. "That is not partnership. That is not respect." Ilara studied him closely. "There is something different about humans. Most species accept their place and wait for the chance to rise. You choose a harder road. We have a saying on Earth: better to stand alone than kneel in company." She touched his arm gently. "The Meridian Alliance remembers what it was like to be new among the stars. If you ever need friends, we will remember this conversation." Carter bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador Ilara. I hope we meet again under better circumstances." As he walked away, his communication device chimed. It was a message from Earth. "Withdrawal approved. Return home immediately. Cabinet enacting Carter Doctrine." 3. Days later, all human diplomatic missions across galactic space closed their doors. Trade agreements were canceled. Research partnerships ended. Within a week, every human had returned to Earth space. The galaxy barely noticed. The Council moved on to other matters. Only Ilara and a few others wondered what the quiet, determined species would do next. On Earth, the United Earth government met in emergency session. President Laura Hayes addressed the global audience. "Today we begin a new chapter. The Carter Doctrine will guide us forward. Complete self-sufficiency and technological independence. We will build our own future among the stars, one that values freedom and dignity for all sentient beings." In his small apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean, William Carter watched the speech with mixed feelings. He had followed orders and delivered the message. Now humanity stood alone in a dangerous galaxy. His secure line buzzed. A call from the newly formed Human Advancement Initiative. They wanted him to lead the diplomatic division, planning for the day when humanity would return to galactic affairs. Not as supplicants, not as junior members begging for recognition, but as equals. Carter accepted the position immediately. There was much work to be done. 20 years passed since Earth walked away from the Galactic Council. The stars continued their slow dance across the night sky. Empires rose and fell. Trade routes shifted. The galaxy barely noticed the absence of one small species from one unremarkable solar system. Susan Morgan stood at the viewing platform of the Luna Research Facility. At 52, her dark hair now showed streaks of gray, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. Below her, Earth glowed blue and green against the blackness of space. Above, the massive construction bays of the lunar shipyards stretched as far as she could see. "Director Morgan, they're ready for you," said her assistant, Jack Wilson. Susan nodded and followed him through the hallways of humanity's largest research center. As director of the Human Advancement Initiative, she oversaw the most ambitious technological development program in history. Today marked a milestone 20 years in the making. The conference room fell silent as she entered. 30 of Earth's brightest minds waited for her. At the center of the table sat Dr. Alan Reeves, a thin man with kind eyes and nervous hands. "Let's hear it, Alan," Susan said, taking her seat. "Does it work?" Alan smiled for the first time in months. "Yes. The quantum fold drive passed all tests yesterday. The prototype ship jumped from Earth orbit to Neptune and back in less than 3 seconds. A cheer went up around the table. 20 years of work had paid off. Traditional faster-than-light travel, the kind used by the Galactic Council, required massive energy inputs and took days to cross similar distances. "Any side effects?" Susan asked when the noise died down. "None," Alan replied. The math was right all along. We just needed to approach the problem differently than the council races. He pulled up a hologram showing the test results. By folding space rather than pushing through it, we bypass the limitations that have held back their FTL technology for centuries. Susan looked around the table. This changes everything. The Carter Doctrine has paid off. We developed this on our own, without council restrictions or influence. Elena Patterson, head of defense applications, leaned forward. How soon can we outfit the fleet? We need 3 months to scale up production, Alan said. By year's end, every ship in Earth space can have this technology. Susan touched a control on the table. The wall became transparent, revealing the shipyard beyond. 5 massive vessels floated in construction cradles. They were unlike anything humanity had built before. Sleek black shapes with lines that seemed to bend light around them. Those are the first deep space explorers, Susan explained. With quantum fold drives, they can reach the edges of known space in days, not years. The team stared in wonder. When Earth withdrew from galactic affairs, many feared isolation would weaken humanity. Instead, it forced innovation at an unprecedented rate. There's something else you should know, Alan said quietly. We intercepted council communications. The Zorians have begun an aggressive expansion campaign. They've already taken 3 systems from the Lentari. The room grew serious. The Lentari were peaceful agrarians, known for their artwork and philosophy. They had always relied on council protection. The council did nothing? Asked Jack. They issued a formal complaint, Alan replied with disgust. The Zorians ignored it. Without enforcement power, council resolutions are just words. Susan walked to the window, thinking of William Carter. After delivering Earth's withdrawal message, he had spent 15 years building a shadow network of allies and information sources across the galaxy. Before his death 5 years ago, he warned that the power balance would eventually shift toward aggressive expansion. What about the Meridian Alliance? Susan asked. Ambassador Alara always seemed sympathetic to our position. Elena checked her datapad. Their homeworld is under blockade. They spoke against Zorian expansion and paid the price. Most of their embassy staff have fled to neutral systems. Susan made her decision. It's time to test our progress. Prepare a diplomatic mission to Lentari space. She turned to face the team. We won't join the council, but we can't stay hidden forever. Let's show the galaxy what humanity has become. 3 weeks later, Susan stood on the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's first quantum fold-capable diplomatic vessel. Admiral Grace Martinez, a decorated veteran of Earth's defense forces, commanded the ship. Final checks complete, Director, Grace reported. We can fold when ready. Susan nodded. Begin the countdown. Around them, 50 officers prepared for humanity's true first step into the wider galaxy. The ship hummed as power built in its core. Quantum fold in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The stars outside the viewport stretched and blurred. For one heartbeat, reality itself seemed to bend. Then the ship emerged in a new system, 10,000 light years from Earth. Transit complete, said the navigation officer, wonder in his voice. 27 seconds to cross 10,000 light years. The Council's fastest ships would take 6 months for the same journey. Grace smiled. And we used less energy than their ships consume in standard orbit. The communications officer interrupted. Director, I'm picking up distress signals from multiple sources. Lentari civilian ships under attack. Susan moved to the main view screen. It showed a scene of horror. Dozens of Lentari vessels, clearly not designed for combat, fled from larger Zorian warships. The Zorians fired without mercy, destroying ship after ship. Life signs? Grace asked, her face hard. Approximately 30,000 Lentari civilians on those ships, the sensor officer reported. They appear to be refugees. Susan thought of the Carter Doctrine, of Earth's pledge to develop independently. But independence didn't mean abandoning others to slaughter. Open a channel to all vessels, she ordered. When the communications officer nodded, Susan spoke clearly. This is Director Susan Morgan of Earth. The attack on civilian vessels ends now. Azorian forces must withdraw immediately. The response came quickly. A harsh, scaled face appeared on screen. "This is Commander Vrax of the Zorian Expansion Fleet. Your presence is a violation of Zorian-claimed space. Withdraw or be destroyed." Grace stepped forward. "Should I ready weapons, Director?" Susan looked at the refugee ships, at the families fleeing their conquered homes. Earth had walked away from galactic politics to find its strength. Now they had found it. "Launch defensive screen around the Lentari vessels," she ordered. "Prepare jump coordinates for all refugees to Earth space, and open all channels across all frequencies." Grace raised an eyebrow but complied. Susan spoke again, now broadcasting to every ship and planet within range. "This is humanity. For 20 years we have been silent, building our strength. Today we return to galactic affairs not as supplicants but as defenders of those who cannot defend themselves." She nodded to Grace, who gave the order. The Defiance moved between the Zorian fleet and the refugee ships. From its hull, smaller, vessels launched, creating a protective barrier. "You have one chance to withdraw," Susan continued. "After that, we will demonstrate exactly what humanity has learned during our absence." On screens across the galaxy, beings of all species watched as the lone Earth ship faced down a Zorian battle fleet. Most expected the humans to be destroyed. In seconds, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Vrax of the Zorian fleet laughed when he saw the single human ship. His scales rippled with amusement as he turned to his second-in-command. "They send one vessel against our 20 warships? These humans are even more primitive than the records suggest." His tactical officer studied the readings with more concern. "Sir, we cannot identify their energy signature. Their hull composition is also unknown." Vrax waved a clawed hand dismissively. "No matter. Destroy them and continue the cleansing operation. The Lentari resources now belong to the Zorian Empire." On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Grace Martinez watched the Zorian fleet arrange into attack formation. Her hands moved calmly over the control panel as she prepared her response. "Director Morgan, all Lentari refugee ships are now under our defensive screen. Quantum fold drives are charging to transport them to safety." Susan nodded. "Time until they can jump?" 3 minutes, Grace replied. "We need to hold the Zorians off until then." The tactical officer called out, "Enemy weapons powering up, multiple lock-ons detected." Grace smiled slightly. "Engage predictive defense system." Around the Defiance, space itself seemed to ripple, as dozens of small drones deployed. Each contained a miniature quantum fold generator. The bridge crew watched as the Zorian fleet fired their main weapons, brilliant beams of energy cutting through space toward the human ship. But the beams never hit their target. The drones created localized space-time distortions, folding the energy beams back on themselves or away into empty space. Not a single shot reached the Defiance or the refugee ships behind it. "Impossible!" shouted Commander Vrax as he watched his fleet's combined firepower disappear into nothing. "Intensify the attack. Launch fighters." Grace turned to Susan. "They're escalating. We should respond." Susan took a deep breath. Earth had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, but she had hoped for a peaceful return to galactic affairs. "Show them our capabilities, Admiral. Minimum force." Grace nodded and gave the order. Operation Pebble. A single, small projectile launched from the Defiance. It was barely visible on sensors, moving at ordinary speed toward the Zorian flagship. Commander Vrax laughed again when his sensors detected it. "They fire a single missile? Do they not understand our shield technology?" The projectile approached his ship, then suddenly vanished in a quantum fold. It reappeared inside the Zorian flagship's engine room, bypassing all external defenses. The small device activated, releasing a controlled electromagnetic pulse. Throughout the Zorian ship, systems went dark. Weapons, engines, shields, all disabled without harming the crew. Grace spoke into the still open channel. "That was a demonstration. Your flagship is now disabled, but your crew is unharmed. We can do the same to your entire fleet in seconds. Stand down." On his darkened bridge, lit only by emergency lighting, Commander Vrax hissed in anger. "This is impossible. No species has the technology to bypass shields this way." His second-in-command spoke quietly. "Sir, we have reports from the other ships. The human vessel is generating energy signatures we cannot even measure, and there are strange readings in local space-time fabric." Before Vrax could respond, a new voice joined the communication channel. It was soft but commanding, speaking perfect Zorian. "This is Ambassador Alara of the Meridian Alliance, now aboard the Earth vessel Defiance." Susan turned in surprise as Alara walked onto the bridge, escorted by Jack Wilson. The blue-skinned diplomat looked older than when she had last spoken with William Carter, but her eyes still held the same wisdom. "Ambassador," Susan said, "we received reports your homeworld was under blockade." Alara nodded. "It still is. I was helping evacuate Lentari civilians when your ship arrived." She turned to the view screen, addressing the Zorian commander directly. "Vrax, your empire's expansion ends here. Earth has offered the protection that the Council would not. I suggest you withdraw while you can." Vrax hissed, "The humans cannot defend every system we choose to take. The Council has already acknowledged our right to expand." "Perhaps," Alara replied. "But they haven't seen what I've seen." She nodded to Susan. "Show them." Susan gave the order. The main view screen shifted to show images from Earth space. Massive shipyards building hundreds of vessels, all equipped with quantum-fold technology. Defense platforms that could appear anywhere in an instant. A civilization that had transformed itself in 20 years of isolation. "This is merely one of humanity's shipyards," Alara continued. "They have built their strength in silence while the Zorian Empire grew complacent. The question isn't whether they can defend every system, it's whether your empire can afford to lose its entire fleet in a failed attack." On the Zorian flagship, Vrax's officers whispered urgently to each other. The tactical displays showed more human ships arriving, smaller vessels popping into existence through quantum folds, surrounding the Zorian fleet completely. Grace Martinez spoke again. "The Lentari refugees are now safely away. Your fleet remains operational except for your flagship. You have two choices. Withdraw and report to your superiors that the expansion into this sector has failed, or continue this fight and lose every ship under your command." Vrax's scales flattened against his neck, a sign of suppressed rage. "This is not over. The Zorian Empire does not forget insults. Neither does humanity," Grace replied calmly. "We remember 20 years of dismissal quite clearly." The Zorian fleet slowly turned away, escort vessels moving to tow their disabled flagship. As they retreated, Susan turned to Alara. "Why did you come to the bridge? Your presence may have put your people at risk of Zorian retaliation." Alara smiled sadly. "My people are already under attack. The Council's protection has proven worthless. When I saw your ship appear, using technology no one thought possible, I knew the galaxy had changed forever." Jack Wilson approached with a datapad. "Director, we're receiving thousands of transmissions. The battle was broadcast across all major communication channels. Everyone saw what happened." Susan looked surprised. "Who broadcast it?" "I did," Alara admitted. "The galaxy needed to see that the Zorians can be stopped, that there is an alternative to Council control or Zorian domination." The communications officer called out, "Director, we have incoming messages from 37 species requesting immediate diplomatic contact with Earth. The Galactic Council is also demanding an emergency session regarding our unprovoked military action in Lentari space." Susan exchanged looks with Grace and Alara. This was moving faster than any of them had anticipated. "Respond to the individual species requests first," Susan decided. "Inform the Council we will attend their session, but not as petitioners. We come as equals or not at all." Alara nodded approvingly. 20 years ago, William Carter walked away to preserve human dignity. Today you return on your own terms, with the power to reshape galactic politics." Susan gazed at the stars on the view screen. "We didn't want this power, we only wanted respect." "Sometimes," Alara said quietly, "one must earn respect by demonstrating strength. The question now is, what will humanity do with that strength?" As the Defiance prepared to depart the system, news of the confrontation spread across the galaxy, at light speed. For the first time in centuries, the dominance of the elder races was in question. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council looked much the same as it had 20 years ago, when William Carter walked away. The same crystal table dominated the center. The same ornate seats arranged in tiers housed representatives from 200 species. But the mood was very different. Daniel Foster, Earth's new ambassador, stood calmly at the speaker's podium. At 45, he had studied under Carter himself and knew the history of this place well. Behind him stood Admiral Grace Martinez and Director Susan Morgan, a show of unity rarely seen in council meetings. Dominant Krex, the new Zorian chairperson, glared down from the head of the crystal table. His orange scales were darker than his predecessors, his voice deeper. The human delegation will explain their unprovoked attack on Zorian military vessels performing lawful security operations, he demanded. Daniel didn't flinch. There was nothing lawful about attacking refugee ships filled with civilians. The Zorian fleet fired on unarmed vessels. We intervened to prevent a massacre. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many species had seen the recordings Alara had broadcast. They had watched as one human ship disabled the Zorian flagship without casualties. The Lentari system falls within the expansion zone granted to the Zorian Empire by council vote, Krex insisted. Their resources are needed for the greater stability of the galaxy. And their people? Daniel asked. Are they also resources to be harvested? Before Krex could answer, Ambassador Alara stood from her seat among the junior council members. I move to recognize the human delegation with full speaking privileges. The Melfian elder waved a tentacle. You forget your place, Meridian. The humans rejected council membership. They have no standing here. They saved thousands of Lentari lives, Alara countered. They did what this council failed to do, protect the innocent. Supporters of Alara rose from their seats. Nearly a third of the chamber stood with her, mostly younger species or those from systems near Zorian expansion zones. Dominant Krex slammed his ceremonial staff 3 times. Order! We will vote on speaking privileges for the human delegation. When the votes were counted, Daniel had been granted the right to address the full council. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various representatives. 20 years ago, Ambassador William Carter walked away from this council because humanity was not treated as equals. Today we return not to ask for membership, but to announce the formation of the Open Hand Alliance. He activated the podium display. A new emblem appeared, Earth's outline with stars radiating outward but now surrounded by symbols from a dozen other worlds. The Alliance will operate on 3 principles: self-determination, mutual defense, and technological cooperation. Any species is welcome to join regardless of development stage or military capability. The chamber erupted in noise. Dominant Krex pounded his staff repeatedly. This is outrageous, he shouted when order was restored. You cannot form a competing governing body. The council has maintained galactic stability for 10,000 years. Daniel looked at him steadily. We are not a governing body. We are an alliance of equals. Each member maintains their sovereignty. We simply pledge to defend each other and share technology freely. The Drovian general who had mocked Carter 2 decades earlier spoke up, his metal faceplates shifting. With your quantum fold technology, the same technology you use to bypass our most advanced shields as if they didn't exist. Yes, Daniel confirmed. All Alliance members will receive this technology, adapted to their needs and capabilities. This caused even more commotion. For centuries, the Council had restricted advanced technology, especially FTL drives, to maintain the dominance of elder races. Susan Morgan stepped forward to stand beside Daniel. We developed quantum fold drives because we had to. Without access to Council technology, we found a different path, a better one. She activated a data transfer. Every representative's personal screen lit up with basic schematics. These are not the complete plans, but enough to show this is not a trick or a weapon. It's a new approach to space travel that uses 90% less energy than conventional FTL drives. The Melfian elder studied the data with all 4 eyes. This would revolutionize travel and trade across the galaxy. Exactly, Susan said. And we offer it freely to any who join the Alliance. A small insect-like being buzzed up from the lower tiers. The Trinali were known for their engineering skills but had always been denied full council membership. The Trinali hives request immediate admission to this open-hand alliance, they announced. Our engineers can see the elegance of this solution. We wish to contribute our own innovations in return. Dominant Krex hissed in anger. This meeting will pause while the senior council discusses this development. As the senior members filed into their private chamber, Daniel turned to Susan and Grace. That went as expected. Admiral Martinez nodded. The offer of technology is the key. Many worlds have been held back artificially for centuries. Ambassador Alara approached them, along with representatives from a dozen other species. The Council will try to stop this. They may even threaten military action. Daniel smiled. We anticipated that. He turned to Grace. Admiral? Grace activated her communication device. Outside the Council building, visible through the grand windows, a fleet of Earthships appeared suddenly in quantum fold flashes. They took no aggressive stance, simply holding position in perfect formation. When the senior council returned, Dominant Krex's scales had paled to a sickly yellow. The council has decided to acknowledge the right of species to form voluntary associations. However, we warn that undermining council authority risks galactic stability. Daniel bowed slightly. We have no wish to undermine stability. In fact, we believe true stability comes from cooperation, not control. The Alliance door remains open, even to senior council members. He turned to address the entire chamber. For those who have suffered under expansion campaigns or been denied technology because of arbitrary development classifications, we offer a different path. Join us as equals. Bring your unique perspectives and abilities. Together, we can build something better than what exists now. By the end of the day, 47 species had requested membership in the Open Hand Alliance. Most were younger races or those from vulnerable systems, but a few were established powers seeking the benefits of quantum fold technology. As they prepared to depart, Susan found Alara waiting by their ship. Your people have surprised me again, the blue-skinned diplomat said. When William Carter walked away, I thought humanity would isolate itself forever. Instead, you returned stronger but not vengeful. Susan smiled. Carter always said our goal wasn't domination. It was to be treated as equals and to help others achieve the same recognition. Alara nodded. The Meridian Alliance formally requests to join your coalition. Our worlds have suffered under Zorian blockade for speaking against their expansion. We need allies who understand that peace requires strength. Daniel extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Welcome to the Alliance, Ambassador Alara. As their ship prepared to depart, Susan looked back at the council building, the symbol of an order that had stood for 10,000 years, now facing its first real challenge. What do you think they'll do? Grace asked quietly. They'll fight it at first, Susan replied, then adapt. The wisest among them already see that change is inevitable. Daniel joined them, reading reports on his datapad. We've received messages from 212 worlds in the last hour. Not all want to join, but all want to talk. Susan thought of William Carter and his quiet dignity as he walked away 20 years ago. That simple act of self-respect had led here to the birth of a new power in the galaxy, one built on cooperation rather than dominance. Then we'll talk with them all, she said. As equals. 10 years had passed since the formation of the Open Hand Alliance. Earth's main plaza buzzed with activity as beings from 100 different worlds moved through its wide avenues. Once, humans had walked alone under their sky. Now, they shared their world with friends from across the stars. Kelly Winters, Earth's president, stood at the window of her office overlooking the plaza. At 63, her face showed lines of experience, but her eyes remained bright with purpose. Today marked the 10th anniversary of humanity's return to galactic affairs. "They're ready for you, Madam President," said her aide. Kelly nodded and straightened her simple blue suit. She had chosen it deliberately, the same color as the uniform William Carter wore when he walked away from the Galactic Council 30 years ago. The ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, once Earth's largest building. Now it seemed almost modest, compared to the massive orbital platforms visible in the sky above. Representatives from over 300 Alliance worlds filled the seats. In the front row sat the original team, Susan Morgan, now retired, Admiral Grace Martinez, her hair now white, and Daniel Foster, still serving as Earth's chief diplomat. Kelly stepped to the podium and looked out at the gathering. So many different forms, some with scales, some with tentacles, some with exoskeletons or energy fields, yet all had come together under a shared vision. 30 years ago, she began, a single human walked away from a table where we were not welcome as equals. Today we gather at a table we built together, where all are welcome and all are equal. Applause rippled through the crowd, each species expressing approval in their own way. Clicks, whistles, flashing lights, or simple hand movements. The Open Hand Alliance now includes nearly half of all known space, Kelly continued. Our combined scientific achievements have advanced medicine, energy production, and space travel beyond what any single species could have accomplished alone. She gestured toward the massive view screens showing Alliance achievements, orbital shipyards where vessels of hundreds of designs underwent construction, schools where children of various species learned together, research centers where scientists from dozens of worlds collaborated. But our greatest achievement isn't technological, Kelly said. It's proving that cooperation brings more strength than domination, that treating others as equals creates more prosperity than treating them as subjects. In the audience, Ambassador Alara nodded in agreement. As one of the Alliance's founding members, the Meridian diplomat had become a bridge between former Council loyalists and the new order. The Galactic Council still exists, Kelly acknowledged. Under their reformed charter, they continue to represent many worlds. We don't seek their dissolution, only their evolution toward a more equal system. This was diplomatic language for a complex reality. After losing nearly half its members to the Alliance, the Council had been forced to change. Gone were the days when elder races alone made decisions. New voices now held power in their chambers. "Let me share a story," Kelly continued. "Last month I visited a school in New Singapore. Human children sat beside young Lentari, Trinali larvae, and even several Zorian hatchlings. They worked together on a quantum physics project, each contributing from their species' perspective." She smiled at the memory. When I asked one Zorian child why he chose to study on Earth, he said, "Because humans know how to walk away from bad systems and build better ones." Soft laughter moved through the crowd. Even the Zorian representatives seemed amused. Relations with the once dominant empire had improved, since moderate factions gained control after their military failures. That child understood what we sometimes forget, Kelly said. The moment humanity walked away wasn't about rejection. It was about refusing to participate in a flawed system, and instead building something better. As she concluded her speech, the plaza outside filled with ships from across Alliance space, a festival of light and sound celebrating 10 years of cooperation. Children from dozens of species released floating lanterns into the evening sky, each carrying messages of hope in their native languages. After the ceremony, Daniel Foster visited a small monument in the corner of the plaza. It contained William Carter's original Earth flag projection device and a simple inscription. The moment humanity walked away, the galaxy knew it was fated to follow a new path. A young Zorian diplomat approached him, his scales shimmering in the evening light. "Ambassador Foster, I've been meaning to ask you something. My elders still debate this in our historical councils." Daniel nodded for him to continue. "Why didn't humans seek revenge?" the young diplomat asked. "After being dismissed, after being mocked, after being threatened when you gained power, why didn't you use it against those who wronged you?" Daniel considered the question. At 75, he had spent most of his life building the Alliance. He had seen both the worst and best of galactic politics. Because the goal was never dominance, he explained, echoing words Carter had often used. It was to build something better than what existed before. True strength isn't in conquering others, but in lifting them up when no one else will. The young Zorian seemed to ponder this. My grandfather was Commander Vrax. He was defeated by your ships 30 years ago. He told me before his death that the greatest mistake the Zorian Empire ever made was underestimating human determination. Daniel smiled. Not our technology? No, the Zorian replied. He said any species can build weapons, but few have the patience to walk away, grow stronger, and return without bitterness. As they spoke, Susan Morgan joined them, moving slowly with the help of a cane. At 82, she had lived to see the fruits of her work with the Human Advancement Initiative. The Carter Doctrine served its purpose, she said, looking up at the stars now dotted with the lights of orbital stations. We needed time alone to find our path, but isolation was never meant to be permanent. Daniel nodded. When we walked away, the Council thought we were admitting defeat. Instead, Susan finished, we were simply taking a step back to see the bigger picture. Above them, a new ship prepared to depart Earth on its maiden voyage. The vessel was unique in the galaxy, designed by a team representing 12 species, powered by the latest quantum fold technology, staffed by a mixed crew from across Alliance worlds. Its mission was to explore beyond known space, seeking new civilizations with the same message Earth now shared with half the galaxy. Come join us as equals. Throughout many worlds, a phrase had entered the languages of numerous species. To walk away like humans, meaning to make a principled stand, by refusing to participate in a flawed system, and instead building something better. As night fell over Earth, the celebration continued. Children of former enemies played together under the stars. Scientists who might never have met under the old system shared discoveries. And in the heart of the plaza, the old Earth flag projection shone brightly, a simple blue world with stars, radiating outward, now the symbol of a galaxy finding a better path forward.